Welcome back to Connect and Transform. This is going to be a demonstration video of tooltips. First, I'll go over 2 or 3 fixes, and then I'll go over an improvement, and then I'll show the code that I mocked up and the tooltip code, and we'll demonstrate it working. So the first fix is make sure that this CSS here says tooltip. I may have had a typo there. I'm not 100% sure. Secondly, I made a typo in the init tooltip function. Make sure that on mouse out is correctly spelled. That's it for the bugs. Now let's talk about improvements. In the init x-axis function, I've replaced a lot of constants with a single constant. I call it max labels to show. And then I've modified a lot of the constants to be expressions using max labels to show. So for example, this used to be 24, and it still is 24, but it's now an expression based on this number. And this expression used to be 12, similar thing, and then I've slightly modified the behavior. This particular one and this one here used to be 8. I decided to just make it use the same variable. And so that's just some minor changes to how the x-axis works. Basically, if there are less than or equal to 13 x-axis labels, we will always show the tick marks even if there's no actual label. So that's it for bug fixes and tweaks. So now let's talk about, I wrote some temporary code here to give us something to hover over for a tooltip. So all I'm doing here temporarily is I'm creating a rectangle at position 8068 that is 1080 wide, 432 tall. That's the entire graphical area of the canvas. I'm setting the opacity to the unselected opacity, filling it with a color, and then I'm assigning 2 data variables. I'm assigning it the series name for now because this is temporary. I'm just using the very first series name that I come across. And then I'm also keeping track of the data index. I'm just hard coding it to 0. These 2 data values are used by the tooltip code so that it knows which series to dig into and which index to use when it's looking for a tooltip value to display on the screen, and then just appending it to the graph. And then I'm calling this init tooltip on that rectangle. We previously wrote init tooltip. Show tooltip is a new function which goes from there to there. A lot of it is just constants. So we're grabbing our data series name and our data index off of the data node for use later on in the function. And then, like I said, we are looking for the series that matches the name given, and then we're looking at the tooltips at the index position given. And so that is our raw tooltip text that we process a little bit later in the function. Then there's some additional constants to keep track of elements, the original width and height of the total canvas, the actual rendered width, and then from that we can get a scaling factor. Once we know the scaling factor, we can correct the mouse X and Y positions, and then we split the tooltip value. If it contains new lines, we split that out into an array. And then we're basically, this is just saying we're only updating the tooltip if it is different than what's already in it. And then we are checking to see whether it's multi-line or not. So if it's a single line only, then we're just appending a new text node with that text. If it is multi-line, then we have a loop here for each line. And we're setting X and Y values on the T-span. We're ultimately creating a text node. And in the middle there, we may also be increasing X and Y positioning. So here, our X position is varied and our Y position is also varied. And then we're appending that information to the tooltip. And then we have more constants where we're getting the total size of the tooltip by its bounded box. And then we are positioning the tooltip. So at this point, we have all the lines. We know how many lines it is, and we know the length and height that is required. So we're doing some X and Y and width and height positioning. And then here, these three if statements, these are the bounds checking. So this is saying if the tooltip would run off of the left, the right, or the top, then we're going to reposition it. So if it's going to run off to the right, then we just stop moving it further right as soon as we've touched the right edge. Same with left. And under normal conditions, the tooltip shows a little bit above the cursor, centered with the cursor. So if it would hit the top edge, then we're repositioning the Y position. As you can see here, we're repositioning the tooltip, which is the text elements and the background. And then all that's doing is it's positioning that to be below the cursor instead of above it. And then we're setting the visibility of our tooltip elements to visible. So let's look at this now, a quick demo. Lovely colors here. I might change that real quick. Let's see, I'm going to change this to blue. I'm also going to point out real quick that we're looking at this ID 22. We're looking at this series, which is index 0. And we're adding only a single override tooltip, which is also index 0. So for the purpose of our demonstration, we have one longer line that's long enough to make it hit the right and left edges. And then we have multiple new line characters here so that it will be multi-line so that we can also hit the top edge and verify that that bounds checking is working. So I've changed the background color to blue. I'm going to save this. I'm not sure what changed most recently in this file. Okay, just added a space. So I'll save that. Let's go back to our demo and refresh. Okay, so now we've got our blue background. You can see that our linear gradient at the top of each graph is giving us a pretty good indication of the top, left, and right bounds of the total canvas. And then you can see this gray rectangle here that we simulated, the temporary rectangle, that's showing the total canvas for the graphical area of the SVG. So you can see our tooltip here. You can see it's multi-line. We can see that when it hits the right edge of the total SVG canvas, so you can see the dark tooltip against the light linear gradient at the top right edge. So as soon as it hits the edge, it stops moving further to the right. And same with when it hits the left edge, it just stops moving. Now notice it goes away when your cursor leaves that graphical area. Normally, you would only see the tooltip if you're hovering over a bar or a line, something like that, you know, maybe a circle in a scatter plot. And then let's look at it right when it touches the top, it shifts to go below the cursor as opposed to above. So assuming that the user creates a tooltip that isn't so massive that it just can't be seen, it appears to be working pretty well. So that is a very quick explanation of the tooltip function and a quick demo of it showing with working with the bounds check. So at this point, we are going to scroll down. We're going to tab over our tooltip function because that's done and working. And we're going to remove the temporary rectangle that we put in the init data bar function. So I'll save that. And then I'm also going to go here and I'm going to remove the background color from the host file so that it's not so crazy. And now we see nothing happens because there's no longer anything being added into the chart portion of the total canvas. And so if we take a really quick look at our file and we just kind of scroll around looking at the leftmost column, we see that the only functions left to right are these four, and only one of these four will ever be called for any single instance of a graph. So we just need to implement processing the data as an area chart, as a bar chart, line chart, and scatter chart. And that will be in a future video. Hope you enjoyed the tooltips. Thanks for watching.